Hey, it's Alicia from mobilitymastery.com, and this is your October rapid fire Q&A. So if you're brand new here, I'm doing these once a month right now, and you have to comment under this video with your question for me, and then I'm going to answer it in next month's video. So everything that I'm answering right now are questions that some of you wrote in on the video that we filmed in September for that rapid fire Q&A. So the way that this works is I don't really prepare anything ahead of time for my answers. I'm reading the questions in real time and then giving you my best answer on the spot for whatever it is that you want my help, advice, recommendations for. So I'm just gonna go through these pretty quickly. That's how it works. So localicious living, kind of a long one here, but I think it'll relate to other people. So she says, I'd like to know more about head and neck fascia and nerve receptors in the head. I apparently have been stressed for many years in my work, sitting all day, technical jobs, not really happy in my work. I allowed gravity to take over throughout each day, and I'd slump to where my cervical spine was crunched up under my head. My back muscles elongated from hunching and my chest muscles shortened. I finally realized things were bad when I started getting headaches and felt a sort of explosion that went from one side of my head to the other. I've been working with a cross-fiber muscle massage therapist for 3 years. Come January, I felt my body releasing and it's all much better. The head has been the last to release, although it is happening in layers as the whole body has been. I would like to know more about the nerve receptors in the head when the cervical spine is affected. I've read that if you tap on the back of your head where the occipital is, this can help bring the receptors more in balance as they get confused when there is tension in the neck. Sorry for the long message. I just need help to get things in my head, neck, and throat to relax. Thank you. So I bet you there are so many people that can relate to this. Number one question that popped out at me reading your comment was, are you still in that job that you don't like? I'm just curious. No judgment for me either way, but I definitely think that one of the most beneficial things any of us can do is realize where in our lives we have choice to create scenarios for ourselves where we don't end up having to manage pain. And so I love to encourage people to find work that feels meaningful, or at least an environment in, a work situation where they feel supported or there's camaraderie or something like that, because that will reduce the stress so much that it'll do some good to counteract all the sitting, right? So sitting, as we know, is so bad for us, right, when we do it all the time. So I just had to throw that in there because that feels really important to me. And then another thing that jumped out at me is the 3 years you've been working with someone to bring your body back into a state of balance and freedom. And to me, that's a really long time. And I'm not saying they're a bad therapist at all. My mission is to get work out there in the world that can help people feel better faster. So yeah, I'm glad you have someone you can work with, and 3 years is a long time. So I just wanted to say that to everybody out there. I believe we can heal faster than that, and it really takes somebody who knows how to do that effective work with the fascial system, maybe the nervous system as well. So there are some complexities there. And then to be perfectly honest, I am not like a nerve receptor expert or somebody who knows like every tiny attachment or nerve origin or, anything like that. My specialty is more in the whole system, right? The fascial system, the nervous system, muscle imbalances, stuff like that. And I've never really had an experience in my private practice where I had to do things like tap on a certain area to get my client relief. Usually what happens when you're working with the fascial system my way, where we're doing compression and shearing of fascial fibers and contacting the nervous system at the same time, as we start to rewire things. So I may or may not be helpful for you, and I'm sorry if I'm not. But so I don't know if you're also still experiencing headaches. You didn't mention that, just kind of you wanted to know about the nerve receptors in the head or the cervical spine is affected. So the number one thing to me for that is releasing all the front stuff, and then maybe strengthening the posterior, like strengthening your lower traps, strengthening your rhomboids, getting your muscles more aligned where your shoulder blades are getting pulled back and down where they're supposed to be, but more naturally, not like you have to consciously contract them. And then, of course, taking care of any forward rotated shoulders that might be there. So you're already on the right track of, it sounds like, with everything you're doing. But I would definitely get into, this front stuff. So your SEMs and the scalenes to help, that posterior cervical spine. And in my opinion, if you open up those pathways for blood flow and nerve communication, and that fascial system and restore the water content, your head's going to be a lot happier. We have fascia here in the head, right? And you can definitely get into your cervical spine and release, or cervical muscles and fascia and release some stuff back there. But in my experience, doing the front stuff is more beneficial for the back, since the cause is usually what you mentioned, which is hunching over a computer, slumping, bad posture, and getting that forward head posture. So I would definitely focus on the front instead of the back. And I don't know anything about the tapping on the back of the head. I'm curious if you heard that from Perry Nicholson. It sounds like something he would recommend, which I actually love him. But he's kind of all over the place with a bunch of interesting things that he does like that. So I hope that was somewhat useful to you. And for everyone else watching and listening, if you have neck and head stuff, I cannot recommend doing the front stuff enough, like all the way down to your forearms. So forearms and extensors, your flexors, your extensors, and all the way up your arms, definitely getting into the biceps, and then definitely into like the lats. All of that is going to support the head to kind of float where it's supposed to be versus hold itself up and get really clenched and tense. All right, and Ben Klochuk. Hey, Ben, said, I have a spot between my shoulder blades on the right side that won't release despite months of lacrosse ball rows on my back. I've been taking time to ask my body for release, but no go. How do you work with stubborn spots that simply don't seem to go away? So this is a great question that is actually going to be universal and applied to just about anywhere in your body. And it's going to make me sound like a broken record, because you'll hear me say this over and over, but where the pain is almost never the problem. Every once in a while it is, but it may have more to do with you and how you're tuning into your body than pain itself or pain patterns. So I actually did write back to you, Ben. We had a mini conversation there, and I have a 1-2 combo of 2 techniques here on Mobility Mastery and then the blog. Actually, the blog is a better place to go because it has them both in the same place, whereas here on YouTube, these videos are from my very first foray into YouTube, and they were separated, so you're not going to find them in one place on YouTube. But if you go to my blog and you search shoulder blade pain or pain between the shoulder blades, you're going to find that blog post that contains 2 videos. But my number one thing would actually be to go to the lats for something like pain between the shoulder blades. And then I also want to just address the idea that you may be contacting tissue that feels tight, or maybe you think is causing the pain that you're feeling, and you go there, and maybe you are somebody who's aware of like tuning into your body, talking to your body, asking your body to relax, to release, to give you permission, right, to be pain-free. And it may not have anything to do with that, right? Your body, I would actually say, rather than asking your body to listen to you, that you're going to get further faster if you listen to your body. And I know all of you here are definitely trying to do that, and it's something I'm trying to teach. So if any of you have pain that simply won't go away, and you keep going to the same spot, and you're like, please release, you're asking your body to release, right? To let go, just relax already. Chances are your body isn't doing that for you, because whatever you're doing is not the problem. And if your body stops talking to you, then it's not going to get your attention to take care of the real problem, which is somewhere else. So no matter where in your body you're working, that's my recommendation if you're working on something and it simply isn't getting better, is to assume that that is not the problem. Go somewhere else. Try, something opposite or something upstream, downstream, and see what that does, and then continue to listen to your body. Measure progress by what your body's telling you, not what you want your body to do for you. All right, next, Sherilyn, I hope I'm saying that right. Thanks for making videos and sharing your knowledge. For releasing trauma, I would be interested in tight hips and groin area due to sexual trauma. I unconsciously clench that area but can't will it to release. Also, I have the tendency to hold my breath when stressed, and an osteo pointed out that my diaphragm is tight as if from an injury and is pulling on adjacent areas. So there's a lot here. First of all, I just want to say I bow to you and totally respect you for being on a path of healing all that. It's something that I've had to do in myself as well. So it definitely can feel like hard work, and I just salute you for being on the path of healing all of that. And my answer is, I guess it's not as simple as like, do this, like do X and Y to heal sexual trauma or whatever is stored in the hips, and then do this for the other. I would, I guess, recommend that, and just from my experience, and again, I feel like I often have to put this disclaimer out, but I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a trauma specialist, other than I've specialized in healing my own trauma, and then I've worked with other people whose traumas naturally come out for release when I'm working with their body. So from that perspective, I have some experience to share with you. And the first thing that immediately comes to mind when I read your question, or what you're experiencing in your body, is that it sounds like you don't feel safe in your body, or you don't feel safe in the world. And that is the number one thing that I would recommend that you address, because in order to release tight areas of fascia, let's say, or address the physical aspect of where you're clenching and holding tension, like I say this over and over in a lot of my videos these days, is we want to prioritize feeling safe in the nervous system to really effectively release fascia. So one thing that you could do, if you feel, like you can walk yourself through this and you feel capable and confident in holding this kind of space for yourself, and you might not, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you may need to actually seek help or guidance where someone else can hold space for you. But something you could do is contact parts of your fascial system where those patterns start to arise or get activated, right? So the clenching of those areas, holding your breath, and instead of making your goal releasing fascia, if you were in my office, I would hold a kind of space with you where we would shift our goal to allowing whatever is in your nervous system to move itself out. And it looks different for everybody. So with some people, that means crying. With other people, it means yelling. Maybe there are words attached to it and you want to say something, right, and verbalize what you're feeling, but maybe there are no words. Maybe there's a story attached to it, like a memory, but maybe there's no memory and it's just a lot of flooding of sensation and emotion. The goal would be, though, to allow what is naturally wanting to move through you to have its full process. That is one way to create a catharsis that your body can complete the traumatic experience that it was having from a long time ago, and allow you to move on and then get to work on some of the other things that I mentioned, like the physical stuff, the physical tension and the imprint. And yeah, unfortunately, there's no like straight shot or one thing that works for everybody. So I would, you can use any of the techniques on my channel here to contact that fascial system, right? As if you were going to release fascia. And I would maybe go to your adductors for the groin area and maybe the abdominal fascia release with your hands for kind of contacting, that area as well, and then move up towards the diaphragm. and just see what happens in your nervous system, and go from there. And then if you feel like you need support or it doesn't feel safe to do on your own, please go find somebody who you feel safe to actually explore this with. But I am going to talk more and more about trauma in coming videos. I'm going to share my story. I'm going to share what's worked for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody else, but it is something that I want to talk more about. So thank you so much for your question. And then Rachel asked about releasing anger in the body. So this is kind of, we're flowing from one thing to the next here with your questions. They're almost like leading into each other. And similarly, you know, what worked for me may not work for you, Rachel. I had a lot of anger to release from my body and from my nervous system. And I finally did it, I believe, pretty completely when I was 33, so a few years ago. And the way that I did it, that just felt instinctive to me, wasn't actually through body work. It was through yelling. Yelling in my car, guttural, like getting really loud. So that was like very, very, very minor compared to the yell that I would do in my car. But like that, like animal, like really embodying my anger, my no, my, you know, like, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Of like, it's not just, it's not fair, or I'm angry, this happened to me, or I'm angry at you. I don't know, but like moving it out without any story, just moving it out through my breath, through noise, through allowing the sound to actually like penetrate my body, which sounds really weird, but to actually like vibrate my body. So it actually was a really interesting experience for me healing my own trauma. And while I'm extremely open-minded and a little definitely woo-woo, some people would definitely call me woo-woo, I also am very skeptical, and up until this point put no stock whatsoever in things like sound healing. And then I had this experience where I was yelling in my car over and over for like 6 weeks when I was really healing the bulk of my trauma that was stuck in my body and in my nervous system. And I hit this one note through yelling that started to almost feel like singing, but it was definitely a yell. It started kind of guttural, and it ended up, I felt it emanating from right here. I guess it's the third chakra. And it felt like actually, like, even though it was coming out of my mouth, that it was actually coming out of this part of my body. Almost like a Care Bear, if you remember those. Anyway, we got a weird image of that just now in my mind. But it felt so powerful and so healing, and reverberated through my whole body. And actually, like, I don't know, I feel like it did something to me, and it felt so good. I just kept trying to hit this note over and over. I have no idea if there's science behind this. I have no idea if other people do this as well. That is something that worked for me. Now, it might be different for you. Maybe other people need to like go to therapy and get some guidance with it, or write in a journal and actually, you know, pull out the story first before you feel it. So I would say, like, if the anger is like bubbling at the surface, it's like right there and you feel it and you just don't know what to do with it. Like, my number one recommendation would just be like, let it out. Like, every chance you get, anytime you're alone where someone's not going to call the cops on you. So when you're driving in your car, if you know, I don't know where you live, but if you live somewhere where sound isn't an issue, but let it out. If you're having a hard time contacting the anger, then I would recommend perhaps using fascia release and contacting, like I was talking to Shay earlier, contacting your body in various locations to with an open mind that maybe you're going to contact the anger somewhere. Maybe doing fascia release in certain parts of your body is going to activate anger in you. If you find that that's true, I wouldn't, like, don't go looking for it. Like, you know, you can contact your body with an open mind that maybe it's there. And sometimes if we're like trying too hard to find it, it's going to be elusive to us. But if it's naturally arising through fascia release or through working, through your therapy, through your trauma, other places like journaling or therapy or whatever, and it's naturally arising, that's when you want to open up the energy channel and just let it out, in my opinion. I hope that's useful. All right, moving on. Claire Beach. Hi, Claire. Claire says, hi, Alicia. Great to have you back. You had a question about fascia release for sciatic pain in the thigh, and you said about the route of the sciatic nerve and that it wasn't sciatica down the thigh. I also suffer what I thought was sciatic pain down the front of my left quad. This usually happens when my back left-sided muscles are very tight or maybe in spasm. It's definitely a nerve pain and not muscular. It also coincides with hip instability on my left side. It can be rotated and high, but this can also happen on the right side. I just thought I'd mention that so the person asking it knows they're not alone in that respect, and I do the fascia releases for lower body. That was long-winded. I do have a question. Pain in the head of the femur. Sciatic release for this? Thank you. So, yeah, and if there's shooting pain down the front of the thigh, I'm inclined to think that it's coming from, at least maybe not the root cause, but that if it's nerve pain coming down the front of the thigh, I'm inclined to think it has more to do with the abdomen, maybe something in the pelvis, maybe something deep in there, maybe something in the tailbone area coming through somehow. But typically, I mean, if it's coming from the front, it's going to be in terms of the nerve travels, right? So I definitely think it's possible that could be coming from the glutes. However, if your glutes are tight and then causing, say, a reciprocal inhibition issue that is, not the common one, right? So for most people, it's going to be quads and quad hip flexors inhibiting your glutes, and then your glutes aren't firing, or potentially you might have pain there. If it's the opposite and your glutes are tight and it's inhibiting your quads or your quad hip flexors and you have an unstable hip, I could definitely see how that would shoot pain down there. However, the fix feels a little tricky and complex and probably very difficult to figure out on your own. Maybe not, and if not, that would be awesome. The reason I say that, though, is especially knowing a little bit of your story, Claire, if the glute is tight, it's usually not, it's tight because your brain is maybe sending a signal to spasm and clamp down and try to grasp for stability in your pelvis region or your hips, right? But that doesn't mean that it's being overused or that it's fascially restricted or that it actually needs to be released. And a lot of the time when we go release a glute that tends to spasm like that, we make it worse and it spasms even more because now it's grasping even harder for that stability. So what really needs to happen is to find the root cause of the pelvic instability and address that, which is going to be in the lower body fascia usually. Might have something to do with the abdominal fascia, and then definitely strengthening the glutes, like getting them firing, getting them stronger, and actually activating the muscle tone to help stabilize versus a neurological contraction from your brain that is trying to protect you from instability. So two completely different things, and you would likely need help. Most people, if your glutes don't just automatically start firing when you start doing fascia release and do the right, stuff in the front, if your glutes just don't turn back on, chances are you're going to need help getting guided through glute activation through a personal trainer who really knows what they're doing, or a physical therapist who really knows what they're doing. And this is something I want to figure out how to put on YouTube to help you guys. The prehab guys, from what I can tell, they really know their stuff in terms of walking you through activation of certain muscles. So I would definitely check them out as a starting point for gluteus medius and gluteus maximus in particular, and see how that goes. And then pain in the head of the femur. So it kind of, the answer I just gave you is related to that as well, because I highly doubt your glutes are being overused and fascially restricted from overuse. So I think that strengthening your glutes is actually going to be one of the best things you could do for pain in the head of the femur like that. Now, it could, like I said, be coming from the abdominal fascia, maybe irritating or pulling on that area. That would be maybe my second go-to. And then if that doesn't work, I would think about going lower in the quads or anywhere in the thigh, but it sounds like you're already doing that. So that's my answer for now. It's the best I've got. Keep us posted. All right. Miss Messy Diagnosis says, hi, you recommended The Body Keeps the Score book to me a few months ago, and I recently started reading it. Thank you. I'm really glad you recommended it to me. It's making me think a lot. Awesome. So happy you're reading it. And I definitely recommend any of you watching this video, if you have mystery body pain or persistent pain, chronic pain that you can't quite figure out, and you think there's maybe a relationship to unhealed trauma, or even just patterns, mind-body patterns, nervous system patterns that haven't gotten rewired, I highly recommend the book. My question is about snapping, cracking joints. Do you think that affects fascia negatively? I feel like I'm covered in adhesions and I tend to crack my joints a lot. Elbows, knees, wrists, knuckles, neck, back, ankles, toes. It's a bad habit that I have difficulty breaking. I'm curious if they're related. I don't really think they are, personally. Everything in my body cracks for whatever reason. Same as you. I can crack my elbow, my toes, my neck, just about everything, my knees. And I do have a lot of fascial adhesions too, but guess what? So does everybody else. And I mean, honestly, like every human has them. I don't think anyone is getting out unscathed this lifetime with our modern world and stressors. So everybody is covered in adhesions. They just probably don't know it. Because unless someone is contacting their fascial system in a way that really hunts out the adhesions and prioritizes that, a lot of the time they're getting glossed over, brushed over, massaged over, not really felt and addressed in a visceral way. So I don't think they're connected. And I also don't think it's problematic, personally. I've read about it. Cracking joints is just kind of releasing a little bit of gas. It doesn't cause arthritis. That's a myth. And if you don't like that you do it, or you feel like it's a nervous habit or something related to a trauma pattern or something that is maybe keeping you stuck, that's a different story. Then I would definitely encourage you to address that. But if it doesn't bother you that you do it, and I don't think it's related to your fascial adhesions or any pain that you might have. So, and I don't think it affects fascia negatively. I'm not really sure there's any correlation there. So there you go. All right. Lisa Barney says, I was recently diagnosed with FSH muscular dystrophy. It's later onset and I have winging, scapula, scoliosis, and difficulty raising my arms. It feels like the fascia in my chest and shoulders are holding on for dear life. Is there anything someone with my condition should or should not do as far as fascia release? So, hi Lisa. I don't know a lot about FSH muscular dystrophy. I do know from talking to you inside one of my courses a little bit about what's going on with you, and I think that like what I want to tell you, this like gut hit of what I want to tell you is we are not as fragile as the medical model would like us to believe. And so many of modern day diagnoses are simply there to help doctors instantly try to cure you with a pill, a medication, or for you to just simply accept the diagnosis and, maybe stop looking for other answers. I don't know. I'm not trying to say they're bad people. I don't like diagnoses like this. I'm not sure. I think it's useful only to a point. And instead, I like looking for root causes that really make sense to each individual person. And it's going to involve the mind, the body, the nervous system, past traumas, right? And how they're moving out of the body. So with that in mind, as far as like the fascia goes, if you are, I don't know that there's anything you shouldn't do as long as you feel safe and it makes sense to you and you believe what you're doing is going to help you. If you start to adopt fear related to your body or fear related to fascia release, and you have a fear that it might hurt you or make you worse, then I wouldn't do fascia release until that fear gets addressed. And if that's happening, then I would definitely suspect that that's part of the actual pattern, kind of taking over the nervous system and creating some of what you're experiencing. I'm not saying that's happening. It's just I'm talking, I'm just talking through my intuition here. I would be inclined to address the deeper nervous system, maybe trauma-related issues here, and then go to the fascial system. And if you feel safe enough to combine them, then using body-related methods, fascia-related methods to contact the nervous system and put you in connection with your body in a new way, that would be what I would do. And again, I don't know a ton about the diagnosis, so that's what I've got for you based on just my intuition and what I know. All right, so next one is Mitsart. Says, hi, thanks for your curiosity and help. I have a chronic right hip pain. I notice it is most in bed and cannot get into a comfortable position to let it go and sleep. It seems worse when I am on my feet for long periods of time or stuck in a car or a plane. It is a throbbing pain deep in the outer hip joint. When I lie in bed and try to rotate my hip, butterfly my bent leg out. There is a tightness and the adductor and hip seem to clench and does not release to allow my bent leg to open flat. So again, I will always do my best to give you my best 1-2 combo here on YouTube. And I always encourage all of you, if you have an acute pain issue, to actually properly map your whole fascial system to find the root cause, because it may not be what I recommend. So I'm going to take my best guess at it for something you could do to begin to investigate and alleviate the pain. And what I'm going to recommend is probably not going to address it completely, because I would never, if a client came into my office, I would never just do 1 or 2 techniques on them, and if it got them to 0, just send them out the door, because that doesn't tell us why the pain is happening and how to make it stop for good, like how to eliminate it at the source. But what you wrote is something I hear a lot in my private practice, and the whole pain getting worse when sleeping thing is really interesting to me. And what I've kind of come to realize through talking to a lot of my clients where that is the case is that it's not actually worse when you're trying to sleep. And so for example, your bed, your position, and anything else happening during sleep might not have anything to do with your pain. The reason it seems worse at night is all the distractions are gone now, right? You're not making yourself busy eating, cleaning, working, talking to people, reading, watching TV, whatever. And now it's just you and your body. And your body's like, finally, it's me and you. I'm going to talk to you now. So that may or may not be helpful to you, but that is kind of what I found. So if that's helpful to anyone else listening, and for some reason it does seem to be with hips, it's like that your hips or your feet and foot cramps and restless legs and stuff like that tend to get our attention a lot during sleep. Other things too, but so the number one thing that I would look into there, definitely try releasing your adductors, because what you described suggests to me that there is a tightness or restriction there that's not allowing you to butterfly or open that hip or leg. And the adductor might actually be clenching and kicking in to protect you from something else, from getting overstretched perhaps. And so the other thing that I would definitely try to go to is your high quad hip flexor, very much at the crease of your hip, right there by the iliac crest in the front. and rotate out towards the IT band, in towards the adductor, and see if you can figure out where the restriction is right there on the same side hip. Now, it might not be, like I said, this might not be the root cause, but see if that starts to eliminate it for you. That might be a good place to start. And then I would definitely investigate the rest of your lower body and figure out where those imbalances are, left to right, front to back, so you can start to figure out maybe you have a pelvic instability issue, like I was talking to Claire about, and maybe you need glute strengthening exercises to fully solve it, right? I don't know. I would need more information from you, but I hope that helps. And finally, last question for this month is Faye. You wrote, I have a disabled daughter who is very, very flexible, but also seems to have very tight muscles. She is nonverbal and very mobile, but only in a prone position. She's recently learned to sit up too. Her muscles seem extremely tight though, and as I try to work with her on physical therapy exercises, I wonder if fascia release could help her relax and increase her ability to participate in standing, kneeling, etc. Is it possible to do release on her without her active participation? First of all, like I just can feel the care you have for your daughter, and I know we've chatted a little bit here on YouTube, and I love that you're asking this, and I so want to be helpful. And what I know about, you know, those deeper fascial adhesions and what it actually takes to release them, it might be really challenging or difficult to do something effectively with her without her active participation. However, I am curious what would happen simply with compression. Like, I'm just curious what she would do, what her nervous system would do with some compression of her fascial system. And, you know, I guess imagining myself in your shoes, if it were me, and that was my daughter, I probably would try to do everything I could from the outside. So me coming in, doing some massage, maybe even using props to help us, like foam rollers or balls or whatever, and just see where we could get. It's difficult, right? Because everything I have on this channel, for example, all the fascia release techniques require movement on the part of the person whose body is releasing the fascia, right? And there are, there are definitely beneficial ways to contact the fascial system and get some change happening from the outside. So I would maybe start with that and see how far you get. And I would love if you would come back and share anything that you discover about that. There may be a lot of other people out there that could benefit from whatever you discover. So thank you so much for asking that. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer for you, but again, I would just see what her body does with it, prioritize safety, of course, in the nervous system, but also I would be curious what just contacting it does to potentially begin to rewire some things, because even just the compression, the contact tends to activate something that could change or create change in her. So, thank you guys so much. Really good questions this month. And again, if you have questions for me that you want me to film and answer next month in November, then leave them below this video. That's where you got to leave them for me to answer them for you. So if you're watching, you have a question, post it below. If you have any ahas, from listening to me, post those below, please. We kind of covered the gamut today, from trauma stuff, anger, pelvic instability. Just a lot of really great questions. So thank you guys for posting them, and I'll see you next month when we do it again.